When underground mining and residential development have tried to coexist, cracks have often appeared in the relationship and the houses. The value of this Vales Point house has plummeted, with mine subsidence causing gaping cracks in the walls and ceiling and a severe tilt.
I don't think I'd want to live in it.
To help patch up the compatibility of housing and mining, the New South Wales coal industry has poured 3 years and $1.5 million into developing a new way of building homes to withstand subsidence. The outcome may appear underwhelming, a reinforced concrete slab that is shaped like a waffle. But this pad, John Hannon believes, will give homes a surer footing in mine areas and could revolutionise brick veneer housing in the Hunter.
It's strong enough to not only withstand the subsidence to start with, you know, the strains and so on that are associated with subsidence, but it's also strong enough that we can re-level the house afterwards.
The slab has been tested in this brick veneer house on the same Vales Point land that gave way under the home, now rendered uninhabitable. So what does this mark here signify?
That's the original ground level, Scott. It's a bit hard to visualise, I suppose, but before subsidence started, that's where we would have been standing. We'd have been up at that level, and the ground has subsided roughly 1.5 metres.
Despite the dramatic shift, Mr Hannon says the house hasn't been damaged and next month will be simply jacked back into place, all for a fraction of the $40,000 repair bill facing the home next door. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
About 8,000 people packed Graham Park to watch the decider. Wyong lost only one game all season and beat Erina 14-4 in the major semi. Wyong took a stranglehold on the grand final, centre Wayne Lampkin and replacement winger Dave Perry running in 2 first-half tries. 12-4 at the break, but Erina was not done with. They came out guns blazing in the second half. .58 Michael Clements and hooker Dave Rose crossed. Warren Douche potted 3 goals and suddenly Wyong was down 14-12. But Erina brought about their own downfall. 2 silly penalties late in the match. Errol Mehmet duly steered the ball between the uprights and Wyong clung on to win 16-14, clinching the club's second title in 3 years.
An ambitious $5 million redevelopment plan that may have seen part of the mall covered by an all-weather glass and fabric roof has been shot down by receivers who moved on the ailing Market Square complex on Friday.
Some fairly ambitious plans there. Will they be carried out?
I can't answer that. I would think in the short term, certainly not by us, but that's something in the future. And for example, it would be very easy for a new owner. All the plans have been approved by the council and it would be very easy for them to take it on.
Receivers have issued a demand of $22 million on the complex's owners, the Melbourne-based Concord Group. Local managers will attempt to encourage tenants to stay with the centre and hopefully boost occupancy before offering it for sale.
Well, at the moment we'll be examining the affairs of the Market Square, the tenants, the leases, all the various activities that make a centre run. This will take us approximately 2 weeks. As far as we're concerned, it's business as usual. We don't intend to terminate any staff. There's no redundancies or anything like that.
Guys, go and give him some curry. You probably won't get on there for another 5 years. So Got a fish, mate? Yes. Live my stuff, isn't it?
It's all here in Adamstown. Cricket, cycling, netball, tennis, bowls, soccer. What it needs is a facelift. 18 months from now, that's exactly what it'll have. First stage involves the upgrading of the soccer ground, home of the Adamstown Rosebud Club. Drainage on the outer grounds will be improved, the dilapidated velodrome will be upgraded and covered, and that will also pave the way for indoor netball. With the area having the potential to become the hub of sport in the Hunter, officials say it's surprising a similar scheme wasn't proposed years ago.
It does surprise when you consider the amount of people that have used the over the years. Rosebuds in soccer have been very big, senior and junior. The cricket people have also used the area. Velodrome was developed many years ago, and it just never seemed to kick on to develop the area as it should be.
These plans have been in the pipeline for 2 years. The entire complex should be finished in 18 months. It's hoped funding will come from the federal government's capital works coffers. The plan still has to be formally put to Newcastle City Council. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
In Canberra today, Democrats leader Senator John Coulter maintained there is no satisfactory solution to the nuclear waste problem. Northwest residents have already successfully fought proposals for a toxic waste incinerator and have vowed to fight any nuclear dump plans. The areas chosen in the study have been selected on the basis of low population density and low fertility, but Senator Coulter says that's short-sighted.
The criteria have to take into account the moral and ethical question of setting aside an area which will preclude future generations from using those areas for other purposes, and the very criteria that have been set now don't include that consideration.
That mankind is creating the world was what YE Primary School had to convince the adjudicators of, but their opponents East Maitland had other ideas. The affirmative argued that we learn from our mistakes and discussed advances in technology, education and health. Today's final was the culmination of 6 months of competition involving 150 schools from Taree to Scone. Dignitaries and students turned up to watch the event in Katare's Garden City Square. Jesmond's primary school choir provided additional entertainment. It's a special occasion for the Anglican Diocese of Armidale. It's the first session of their 41st Synod. Ceremonies kick off tonight, with the bulk of the weekend's activities centred around the New England Girls' School in Armidale. The city's Anglican Bishop, Peter Chiswell, says the diocese stretches from Lightning Ridge to Corindai out to Barradine and Tenterfield. He says 140 representatives from the diocese, 1/3 of them clergy, will be in town for the Synod.
The Synod really is the representatives of all the parishes of the diocese meeting together to decide matters that have got a common interest. They decide policies for themselves and things like that.
One topic high on the agenda will be the establishment of a development fund,
where we'll seek deposits from people around the diocese, which will be interest-bearing, and we'll use those for development work and for maintaining the diocese generally.
As for the ordination of women, it'll be discussed, but it's not a priority.
At the present time, I judge the mood is unlikely to change from their previous decisions, which have been not to proceed with the ordination of women priests, but time alone will tell what the Synod will do.
In conjunction with the Synod, a 12-metre-long kneeling tapestry will be unveiled in St Peter's Cathedral in Armidale. It's been 4 years in the making and is the result of the combined efforts of all parishes in the diocese.
Each parish of the diocese, there being 35 sections of this, worked a section. Each section represented the traditional symbol of the patron saint of the chief main church in their parish.
The tapestry will be placed along the communion rail in the cathedral. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Tomorrow at the MCG, Footscray and Geelong do battle for the chance to meet the West Coast Eagles in this year's AFL Grand Final. The Bulldogs haven't won a flag since their victory over Melbourne way back in 1954, but showed great purpose in the semi-final victory over St Kilda last weekend. There have also been some lean times for the Cats. Despite a consistently high profile in the competition, their last trophy came 29 years ago. Geelong will need to lift its all-round performance after being belted by the Eagles last week. Footscray will be desperate to shut down the Geelong attack to stay in the fight for the flag. $1.50 and $1.40, $1.70 and $8 even. The Quinella $6.40 and the trifecta $111.60.
Lee Wharf Number 2 became the centre of investigations after the body was noticed floating among pylons near fishing trawlers.
At this stage, it was a fisherman who was mooring his boat and he found the body located under the wharf.
That was the early hours of this morning?
Yes, approximately about 7:30am.
The area under the wharf is a tide trap for flotsam and debris. Forensic officers were called to the scene. Rescue and water police recovered the dead man. His body badly decomposed after spending up to a week in the water. A post-mortem will be held on Monday to try to determine the cause of death. Andrew Lobb reporting for NBN News. Bidders were thin on the ground for the 11-storey building that's been derelict for years. Latec House was put to auction by the City Council to recover more than $70,000 in unpaid dues. The building was bought by a Sydney solicitor and long-time associate of former owner Theo Morris. Mr Morris will continue to have a say in the building's future. The pair say a new deed of title could clear the way for the development of office and residential space in the building. Rod Saunter was an organised bike ride. More than a dozen cyclists, mostly police from the Central Coast, mustered for the start at the entrance yesterday.
We decided to get together and try and raise a few bob for Ronald McDonald House up at John Hunter Hospital.
Even as they were waved off, the group had banked more than $4,000 in entry fees and sponsorships. They were heading for the Hunter Valley in Port Stephens, but it was just after a lunch break in the steep hills near Mulbring that the ride took a sad turn.
Wouldn't have been 10 or 15 minutes after coming along, and Rod's went to come up the hill here and obviously wasn't feeling too well and went to step off the bike and he said he didn't well at all.
Senior Sergeant Saunter was airlifted to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital but was pronounced dead on arrival. Riders at the head of the pack didn't hear of the tragedy until late in the afternoon. The ride was scrapped.
Our aim and intentions were as to raise some money for the Ronald McDonald ward of John Hunter Hospital. It was the whole idea of it, and I feel sure that Rod will feel good knowing that's what we were doing anyway.
The Centenary Spring Floral Festival blends a spectacle of natural and religious splendour. Gardens and carpets of petals have sprung up in the cathedral's chapels. Spring blooms cascade from fonts and pulpits. The flowers have been donated by the Commercial Growers Association and the display set up with the help of TAFE students and garden societies. The heady sense of spring will be replaced next week by a festival of music.
Two and a half lengths to Spondula, followed by Simon's Dad from Awesome Force and Arkraj, but Snowlord is well clear and is in no danger in the run home, and Snowlord races home to an easy win. Snowlord will win it by 5 lengths to Awesome Force. Third Simon.
25-1, 12-1 and 11-4 equal favourite. There was plenty of feeling early. Balmain's Derek McVeigh called out for a touch of the rough stuff. And after a couple of penalties, Matthew Johns got a pass to Jamie Ainscoe, and his lob ball found Ashley Gordon, who did brilliantly to score. But then the rot set in, Ainscoe making a dreadful blunder from the restart. And from there, Balmain stuck up the ball. Ainscoe again couldn't handle, and the Tigers had levelled the score. Balmain hit the lead from a penalty, and while Peter Sterling was hard at work, the Tigers scored in the top right-hand corner of your screen. 16-4 at half-time, and the Knights needed to score first, and Tony Butterfield did everything but post points. And after having all the possession, the Knights found themselves under pressure. Glenn Miller went very close for the Knights, but was lucky not to get pinged for a double movement. And then they finally got a try, the brothers Matthew and Andrew Johns combining. But the Tigers were home and will now play North in the grand final. And current South Newcastle Rugby League player Trevor Crowe. Last night, Crowe was named the MMI Country Rugby League Player of the Year at a dinner in Sydney, capping a brilliant season. Crowe was a member of the victorious Newcastle team that retained the Country Divisional Championships. He was also a superb player in the City versus Country clash. The Country won for the first time in 17 years, gave the Poms a bit of a hurry-up and helped South to the semi-finals. And at Skateline Broadmeadow today, the Newcastle Flyers played their way into the National Roller Hockey League Grand Final with a hard-fought 8-5 win over arch-rivals the Brisbane Bulls. Newcastle were on top in the first half and held a 3-goal advantage at the break, and they were able to hang on for the win.
Police recovered the 18-year-old's body from under Lee Wharf No. 2 yesterday. Investigations pending the outcome of a post-mortem to be carried out tomorrow haven't turned up any signs of foul play. Michael, or Mick to his friends, was one of more than a dozen street kids who by choice or circumstance live in the wharf sheds.
Because he hadn't ring, he hadn't put his dial form in, and I went to check everything of those. Asked the dial office if he put his dial form in, and that's when he really started to get to me. I just knew he wasn't coming back.
Think about it. No one really cares much anyway.
Where were they?
Oh, they're going to run. Oh. Kept it, just dry up.
Have get Ranger. I don't think I will.
Matthew Riper, Cooper, Deborah Turner,
The political life of independent Alderman Bob G is blooming. The nursery owner was last night elected 10 votes to 5 to the position of Maitland Mayor by his colleagues. Although his election came as no surprise, with the exception of John Brown, who had boycotted the vote, the bloc of independents had predetermined to share the mayor's role among themselves, and it was Bob G's turn for 12 months. But the new mayor says the arrangement isn't contrary to what it means to be independent, because no one was told how to vote.
At any time, any of the independents were free to walk away and vote as they chose, and I think Alderman Brown demonstrated this ability.
Before last year's local government elections, the independents got together and did something usually expected of the major political parties. They decided who'd be mayor for the following 4 years. That means the voters in Maitland already know that Alderman Beryl Humble is destined to be mayor next year and Pat Hughes the year after that, and without the people having any say whatsoever.
I think it should be decided by the people, yeah, for sure.
What happens in the council is not a true representation of what the people of the city want.
Who is the mayor now?
Alderman Bob G.
Bob who?
In the future, near future, be putting in a further notice of motion to have mayor by popular vote at the next local government elections.
Alderman Fairweather says the independents have also used their numbers to block his ALP colleagues from heading the committees that help determine council's direction. Mayor G says it was merit, not politics, that prompted the independents' decisions. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
All quiet at Awabba, no fanfare on the farm. For Joseph's mum Roberta, it was business as usual. Just a quick phone call early this morning, a business-like Joseph informing her that he had just won his 9th gold medal.
It's just great to see that he's broken some of his own world records and done so well.
He struck a rich vein in Madrid, gold in the 100, 200 and 400 freestyle. In the 50 and 100 fly, more gold came in the relays. As a boy, Joseph suffered epilepsy. Each attack left him slightly more brain damaged. When it came to learning to swim, he was not a willing pupil.
He used to run to the end of the line to avoid getting in the water, so he didn't learn to swim till he was 10.
But the medal's a testimony. Once they got Joseph into the water, they couldn't get him out of it. In 1991, he was NBN's Disabled Sports Star of the Year.
In September I'm going to Madrid, and besides that I've already got a scholarship from the AIS for me swimming.
Joseph's achieved his dream. He comes back home this weekend, and there's a surprise in store, courtesy of his second greatest sporting love.
The rugby this morning to tell us that they're giving Joseph 2 tickets to the grand final on Sunday, and that'll be about the best welcome home he could possibly get.
Mum reckons he'll be so excited she'll only have time for a quick welcome, something along the lines of,
"Oh, congratulations and show us your medals."
Flags were flying at half-mast at police stations across the Central Coast as the community farewelled one of its most respected members. Senior Sergeant Rod Sonter died of a heart attack during a 3-day charity bike ride near Mulbring on Friday. It was one of the many charity events Sergeant Sonter had organised. Hundreds of friends, relatives and police from the coast, Sydney and Newcastle attended the funeral at the Anglican Church in Gosford. Sergeant Sonter was 48. He is survived by his wife Margaret and 3 children.
The
The 455 children at the Junction Public are the first to admit they get life pretty easy. And they've been so shocked by scenes such as these, the students decided to do something about it. A map of Africa was drawn on the school playground and each student placed a part of his or her pocket money on one of the countries. The money goes to the Care Australia Africa Famine Relief Appeal. For the students, it was a lesson in understanding of the plight of others less fortunate than themselves.
The storm clouds hung ominously over Mitre 10 Stadium, but the future looks bright for the Breakers. Fresh back from overseas, Newcastle's newest recruit.
I was always hoping to come to Newcastle. It was I hoped that from the day I came back that I'd be able to come up here, so I'm glad it turned out that way.
Jason Polak may not be a household name, but he's already received some huge raps. Polak came back to Australia to cement a place in the Australian squad. He did that against Croatia. Chances are he'll make his debut for the Breakers in the opening NSL match this Friday, a home game against Wollongong.
Nothing really flashy about them, but they're very hard to break down, and this year will be no different.
Jason's been recovering from a foot operation, but he says he'll be right for the Steel City clash.
Really good today. I was running on it today, so I should be right for Friday.
Jason's signing was formally announced this afternoon at a sponsors' luncheon.
Few of us receive a birthday card with this number written on the front. Ellie Clark turned a century today at Legacy's community nursing home at Wyoming. Ellie says the secret to longevity is to live a good life. She had only one daughter and 4 grandchildren, so she became a second mother to many other children. The extended family and friends were at the celebration today.